when I read the report that had survivors defiled or raped by their parents or guardians.
But as we normally say, a Chiduku ground, it's totally, yes, different. We don't have witness protection laws. We don't have, I'm telling you this, I'm a practicing lawyer, but we don't have restraining orders.
The people that are reporting, what usually happens when they come to the station?
A file is assigned to an investigating officer.
Hello and a good day to you. My name is Helen Kabahukia and I'm your host for the Conversation After, where we're navigating the law, the culture and the silence for survivors of sexual violence in Uganda. Today, we're going to be joined with the police, the law, and civil society, key players in fighting against sexual violence and gender-based violence in general in our country. First, I'll start with our ACP, Nanyunjo Sarah. She belongs to the Department of Child Protection Services in Uganda, where they are the first responders to sexual violence victims that come to their station. The next is Bui Mebo Nambura. She'll be representing the law. She works with FIDA Uganda as a legal service provider, who is the next step for receiving justice for sexual violence victims.
And finally, Ms. Maiga Vilkis from the African Humanitarian Action, an organization that works with survivors and victims of sexual violence in Uganda, supporting migrants and citizens to ensure that they receive justice within their communities through the law and the courts. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to today's podcast show.
The police is usually the first point of contact for survivors. Now, from your experience, what usually goes on when these victims come, or the people that are reporting, what usually happens when they come to the station?
What usually happens is when they come to make their formal reports, the first thing we do is to assure them that they are going to be worked on because they need assurance. We make an entry. A file is assigned to an investigating officer. A scene of crime is listed. Forensic evidence is picked. Perpetrator is arrested. They are both subjected to medical examination. And if we have witnesses, their statements are taken and file compiled and sent to DPP for perusal and legal guidance.
Okay. The law is very clear. However, we often deal with believability. When victims come to the station and there's the question of can they be believed, especially in instances where the evidence is not speaking for itself. Let's say there's a possibility that the crime has been happening over time and no medical tests have been done, number one. Number two, there's no pregnancy whatsoever. And of course, there's been witness tampering and of course, tampering of the scenes. What often now happens and how do we get this child to feel that, okay, it's safe to talk to me and I will believe you?
The officers handling children are trained to ensure that these children are put in a space where they can open up often while they're being interviewed. And it doesn't matter. You may feel there is no evidence, but as an investigating officer, I'll know what I'll pick from what you tell me. And remember, with courts, they work with collaborating evidence. So I will not fail to pick something that I can put on file to pin the perpetrator.
Okay. I'm going to nibble on that part, especially being that you are the next person after police. Usually you are who is called when police says, now we have this case, the legal person. What are the first steps as a legal officer are taken when you receive the victim or a report, and then there is also a suspect that is not yet been pointed at as the perpetrator.
So, thank you so much, first of all, for having me here today. And before I even get into the discussion, I think it's important for us to distinguish between lawyers that work under the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions that are responsible for prosecuting these cases in court, and then we, the legal service providers. So the culture has been that whenever we receive a case of sexual violence, one is if the matter has not been reported to police, we work with this client to police and make sure that they have their piece of evidence, or rather their statement, taken to begin the process, because if that is not taken, then there is nothing we are going to court for. But that aside, we try as much as possible, whereas I know we are not psychosocial personnel, we try as much as possible to try and talk to the victims and their families to see to it that they actually take on this path of justice, bearing in mind that we have so many cultural influences around sexual violence that promote reconciliation, that deter survivors or witnesses of, to cases of sexual violence from reporting their cases. So we try as much as possible to engage their families to try and take this path, because if they don't, then the work of the police is frustrated, the work of the prosecution is equally frustrated. So we do the psychosocial support element somehow. And also because as a lawyer working with FIDA, we also have a psychosocial unit where we receive these clients and they're taken through the entire process. It would be nice for them to go and receive shelter, but I know we do not have government-funded shelters, okay? And so, yes, so that is roughly the path we take to see to it that they have their statement. When the file is sanctioned, then we are going to be watching, briefing these cases to ensure that the procedures, the criminal justice procedures, are actually followed in courts of law. This means we are going to stand by the state and ensure that the perpetrator is actually found guilty and sentenced. But where you find that police has a suspect in this case, someone whom they suspect has committed the offense in their custody, then, well, again, it gets back to the collaborative efforts. The Constitution provides for 48 hours in custody. So if we are to see to it that justice prevails, how then do we work with police to see that this person here is arraigned? And if they are to be remanded by the judicial officer, at least they're not in police's custody. Yes, so those are some of the initiatives we undertake.
You mentioned something very critical in this conversation, culture.
Yeah.
To reconcile, to forgive, and let bygones be bygones.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's what usually prevails. How often does that culture block your efforts in pursuing the legal process for victims?
Very often. And I speak from a point of, or I come from a place where I've worked with so many rural communities, okay, that have these cultural norms deeply entrenched. So the police is there, yes, to do its work, but the culture, most of the survivors that have been defiled are below the age of 15. So this means they're still living in their parents' home, and they are very, very prone to giving in to pressure, okay? So I'll give you an instance. In Karamoja, when a girl is defiled, most cases you find that the family does not even want to report these cases to police. They're just going to sit together with the family of the perpetrator, negotiate quote-in-quote bride price, and the girl is sent off. Okay. Even when the family tries as much as possible, let's say, to push this process at police, see to it that it's going to court, we do not have sufficient legal framework that provides for protecting of witnesses. So what happens then to the survivor after she's reported the case and testified in court? Do you think she's safe back home in a community where culture really takes its roots so deep? She really isn't. And then Yes, basically that. So culture really finds its roots so deep that it promotes reconciliation and re-traumatization of the witness or the survivor, and the insufficient laws that we have, much as we have really been praised for having a strong legal framework as the country, we still have inadequacies. So that inadequacy really deters, or rather feeds into the already existing culture to deter survivors of SGBV.
Yes, Sarah, she brings up a very good point where in rural communities, people rarely report and rather often go within their own means of justice by saying, let us do child marriage, or let us find a way for, if the perpetrator is within the family, forgiving, right? What are some of the places from your point of view, from as a police point of view, where you've had struggles with families in ensuring, in making sure that the victim's report is not believed or is actually watered down by the police, and often, most times, supposed to be just away?
It is not the duty of police to water down what a victim is saying. However, as police, we normally do our job to investigate these cases. But along the way, it is the people within the family that put pressure on these victims, and you find that they'll lose interest in pursuing for justice, and it rings a bell back to us. What have we done as the public to ensure that victims stand for their rights, especially the children who are voiceless? And it is us who are shaming them. We've seen a number of cases on social media that are really ruined because it is us, the public, that are putting down these victims.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to come out to say, hey, this is what I'm undergoing. And it's us, the public, at the same time, shaming them and making it very normal. It is not normal.
Okay. Yes. Which now brings Miss Maiga. You stand at a critical point of view where you reconcile where government is quite, refrained, not refrained in terms where they can't or they won't do it, but the framework is not allowing some of the justices to arrive. And that's where you come in as a human rights, organization, as an organization that is purposed to ensuring that people receive the voice that they do not have. And that's where you come in. As an organization, how often do you have to go through the communities to really educate and create awareness on ensuring that the women and parents realize that what is happening to their children is not normal? And how oftentimes do you get the challenges where you're put down because you're trying to push a certain agenda?
First of all, thank you. Thank you for having us. The organization where I work is African Humanitarian Action. We normally, we go to these communities basically every week. We do 2 activities. First is awareness, then sensitization. These are totally 2 different things because the community you're going to is black. So we first make them aware of their rights. Because we basically what we look at is preserving the dignity of the women and the survivors. And when we reach out to this community, first make them aware of their rights. When you give them that awareness, that's why you get shocked. People come to you after and they be like, oh, I want to talk to you. Like slowly they come to you and be like, I want to talk to you, something happened to me, but do you think I'll get justice? Do you think I'll be heard? Then someone else can be like, can you please come back next time? I have a neighbor not come, but they're having this program. So that's when you come back and start with shut.
Yeah.
We do this every week. We target different communities. But we normally don't not do the urban areas because for them at least they know what they're doing. So the target is what's Kawen, Pain, Machuan, and the different society. Yeah.
But do we have cases where, as you're pursuing the sensitization, where families are silencing and they're refusing to come and show up for the sensitization and the awareness because it may be educating the victims?
Yes. Oh, it happens a lot. Like, what they do is they'll first send one person to hear what they're going to. So the person says, oh, let's talk about the loans, GBV, something about women, something about defilement, something like that, they will not come. We will not show up. Some families will not show up. Then there are those ones who will come, but they will hide. But you find the women who are coming, they're veiling themselves, or they're covering themselves, or they're like far away, but they want to hear. So yes, you get them, but then when you find out that there is a community or there's a family that has not stand up because of their reasons, some of them they do culture, some of them it's religion. Religion also, as people say, culture plays a big role. Religion plays that biggest role, because you have people who believe in their religious leaders more than anything. So some of them will not come because of their religion. So when you find out that those will not come because of that, we have to cut our way, find a way how we're going to break that. We either part of the religious leaders or we talk to the family leaders and tell them, oh, why did you guys come? We can't even talk about something else. Or sometimes you find like the reason they didn't come, you'll be like, most times they didn't come because they're survivors and they're afraid of their family here. And so when you find out that maybe they're survivors and they're afraid of their family here, you tell them you can come to office. And no one will know you've come. Yeah, that's that. Yeah.
Interesting. She brings a very huge point on religion as a cultural refrain. I often say that religion and culture are not very different. The only difference is that one has God and another one has a father at the head of the clan. For the legal part, how often do you see people pulling out and they're saying, my mother is being accused of ABCD, or for the Uganda that say the things of the house are not spoken out oftenly. And here I want numbers. In 10 cases, how often do you hear such statements?
In 10 cases, you hear that statement in 6 people. In 6 people. But for you to get to hear that statement or those statements, you need to create a very conducive environment where someone is able to trust you not just with the information they have, but with themselves, and get to know that they will be secure with the information they're giving you. Yeah. And good. So I
get you. And you have to keep on telling them justice is not a privilege. It's a right. It's a right. Okay. It starts to be like a song to them, like, justice is not just a privilege. Yes, I want to be your lawyer, but I want to be more than that. Your friend. I want to walk with you this journey. Immediately tell them that and they feel comfortable with it, they will open up.
Okay. I won't ask this to the legal person because they're the ones who actually end up going to court and not to the police. The Uganda police report produced last year over 14,000 sexual violence victims for rape, defilement, incest, and just normal assault. And rape among all, while there was a decline in the sexual violence in general, rape and defilement continued to skyrocket. There's something that I noticed on that report. Incest recorded very little numbers, yet the same report of police said that most of the perpetrators to the sex violent victims were relatives, whether they were guardians or parents. At what point do we reconcile the data to reflect both sides? Because while the incest was recording very minimal numbers within 3,000, rape and defilement were recording above 10,000. Then I noticed there was a mismatch in data, because if these kids are being raped by their parents, that is still incest. And now how do we reconcile that? And at what point do we push it in court and say this is not just a family matter that should be handled at a cultural level, but should actually be handled legally?
So for incest, I want to say incest is not just about the parent or guardian. When you read the law, incest goes ahead to even cover relations with siblings, uncles, aunties, or distant cousins. So then it's when I listen to the report, when I read the report, it makes me maybe ask myself a question: were these only cases that were, that had survivors defiled or raped by their parents or guardians? or did it also include the wider coverage?
Just to chip in a little, I think most of those cases are preferred, or the charge that is normally preferred is aggravated defilement, and that is those cases are embedded within. That's why you find they normally don't charge incest, but prefer charging aggravated, since there is a relationship.
But also maybe just to add on to what she has said, incest is one of those crimes that should be sanctioned by the DPP, him or herself.
Yes.
So for you to get the DPP to sanction that one file is delaying justice, really. So then I would understand why they have a higher number of aggravated defilement cases.
Yes.
Because when you look at one of the ingredients of aggravated defilement, one of them is the fact that one must be a parent or a guardian that is taking care of that survivor. So it's like she says, it somehow encompasses the whole aspect of incest, or the whole entire crime of incest.
Okay, away from the kids, really, because violence is not only onto the children, there are also the adults that are 18 and above, right? And we are finding places of power play where this person is older than this child. Yes, this older than this lady or man, who are within 20 years and 22 years of age. And because these people have been groomed and they think that it is a normal relation, at what point is, now start with the police, when this case is reported, is there a place where we pull out of the story and say, what is the power play here? Who among these is more powerful to determine a decision of the other? Or do we say it was a consented relationship regardless because they are all above 18?
For the children, of course, we don't consider their consent. And then with adults, as we are handling the victim and the perpetrator, of course, we look at their relationship because as you're handling a woman and a man who are in marriage, remember there are other mitigating factors, other factors surrounding them. So you must handle them with a lot of care because there are children involved. As you want to hurry up with charges, pressing charges on the man who has assaulted the wife or the wife who has assaulted the man, remember there are children involved in the family, there are other people involved. So at some point, we normally give them some time to see, can they mediate? Is it the first time it is happening? What is the reason behind this violence? Can it be sorted? Is it something beyond that they cannot sort? We look at so many things, before we rush to make conclusions as police.
She raises a very clear point, court mediation or the mediation. I was taking a stroll at one of the shelters in Gulu, and I noticed that in 12 cases that they receive, for example, in a month, and that is just like one of the highest number that I saw there, 9 cases would end up, for example, in mediation and only 3 are convicted. At what point does the court say that this raped child, now we have space for mediation? Because from my own POV as a mother and as a woman, I do not think there should be any kind of mediation. But however, there have been cases. We spoke to a court clerk who preferred to remain anonymous, and he said most of the cases actually end up in mediation. And I wondered, is it that us who sit at the helm of the justice system are also ingrained in culture that we say we also first seek for reconciliation, or does the court mandate that actually happens?
Yeah. So the criminal justice system faces quite a number of challenges. Okay. The police will do its work, present a file to the ODPP for sanctioning. ODPP will do its part and sanction the file. You cannot stop 2 adults or 2 people from reconciling.
But also, on your mediation part, I feel it's not mediation per se. There's what we call plea bargain.
Okay.
Yes. So sometimes I've seen it with the clients like we handle. Sometimes you go to court and you sit down with a fellow land and you're like, okay, counsel, what are we going to do? And you know the perpetrator, most of the ones I've dealt with, I don't want to say most of the ones I've dealt with, by the time we have through the whole system there, they know they're guilty. So we table down the plea bargain. Plea bargain is basically you accept your charge, but we give you a lesser sentence. Okay, you understand? So you accept what you did, and then we, in accept, because first of all, you are now not wasting court's time. You're also not wasting our resources, and also the survivor or the victim is not going to go through that hassle of coming to court all the time on the trauma. You understand? So I think for court mediation, they mean plea bargaining, because we are now sitting down and then we're like, okay, these are the terms we are bringing on the table. Also, this is the term you guys are bringing on the table, but now it's just a lighter sentence.
I do hope there's no one that is left scot-free in mediation.
No.
But you see, just to add on to what she said, there is the plea bargain, but then there is just this point where the judicial officer and the state cannot continue the prosecution because the two have agreed to reconcile. So if there is
Even where now the two families have said we no longer want it anymore.
Yeah. I think that one there will depend from region to region within the country. If it's within Kampala, people are really learned. You don't expect that to happen, but then there's some cases that have come up country, and the two have decided, and you look really at the culture, because you do not want to just take the law as a vacuum. It doesn't work just as a vacuum. You're not going to just come and say, the law says punishment by death and you're going to give death. No. There's so many factors that surround a whole trial. So if families come and decide and say, you know what, first we have mediated and reconciled without a survivor, without a complainant, without a witness, why are you prosecuting?
Exactly.
Definitely the case will be dismissed.
I think also depends on the gravity of the case. Yeah. For domestic violence, it's very common. Mediation is very common.
Yeah.
It's very, very common. But for sexual violence, it's very, very hard. And there's a thing I said about between the man and the male, how do they handle it? GBV, the biggest cause of GBV that times I've spent in this one is people say poverty, but it's power. Yes, the misuse of power. In GBV, we have power to power over, power within, all that. It's power. You understand? So sometimes you look at a woman who come wailing that she has been beaten, she has been violated and everything. But as you go in, you understand who has the power over. Yes. And you realize the woman who has the power over the man. And it's the one actually who was violated. But because society is there, sometimes society in the back of the head, listen to a woman first. If a woman comes crying, she's the one who is the survivor. You understand? But one thing I realized that we have to sit down and be like, who has the power over the other? Who has the power within? Who has the power to? Okay. Yeah, I feel that's how police was with
the power point you bring in now brings me the question of policies. What are the available policies, or are there even policies to begin with that really cover most of these offenses, especially around violence, be it generally the gender-based violence? Are there policies, and how do we navigate? Because I've had a lot of mediation and I've had understanding power play. And I've had about prosecution and ensuring there's consent, even as you're prosecuting. Now, at what point do the policies come into play and say, and you've said it in the right way, that the law is not a vacuum, justice is not a vacuum. There are a lot of power plays in it, there are a lot of things. Now, what are the policies that still, somehow in one or another, protect those that cannot protect themselves? And are there those policies, or is that now where we speak to the gap within our laws?
I think the number of laws that try to address some gaps. But like I said in the beginning, there are still some inadequacies. Okay, within the legal system. One being the witness protection. Without witness protection, police is going to keep recording so many dismissals. When you look at our constitution, it has the rights of accused clear and stipulated. An accused should not be in police custody for more than 48 hours. What about the victim? They're gonna be traumatization. Burden of proof, and then an accused person is entitled to a speedy trial or fair hearing. I take into consideration the trauma that this accused person and the victim is really going through. So there are pretty much some inadequacies here and there that really need to be taken into consideration. Probably come up with, there is a bill that is before Parliament, the sexual offences bill. If that bill could really get passed, or rather enacted, it won't really be a great importance because there's so many other offences that it brings into play that we have for a very long time as society neglected. It's in that dressing.
And also the part for the law and the policies, as she had said, the laws are there. I cannot even blame the government, the laws are there. But as we normally say, a Chiduku ground, it's totally, different. We don't have witness protection laws. We don't have, I'm telling you this, I'm a practicing lawyer, but we don't have restraining orders. To get a restraining order, like, against a perpetrator, all his family, not come close to me, 100 meters, those things. In Uganda, we have tried, the only way you can try is, of course, threats, through the police, through the chairman, or now as organizations we have where we take the survivors. Yes, we try at least, I tell them, if you're staying in Machindi, let's take you to this place in Kawempe for some time, but for how long will they be there? Because most of these homes can only have a survivor for 1 month. Yeah, you understand? So what next for them? The policies are there, but implementation of those policies. And then there's some gaps in these policies that are missing. We don't have restraining orders, we don't have witness protection, we don't have even the punishments that are given, sometimes they are light. And I think they should also remove the mediation. It's not the fact that it's there, the gap is there, because when you look even at the MCA, it has room for mediation, room for, forgiving. And I think it should be removed, because the moment it's there, people will always be like, even if the person is not willing to mediate, but the forces behind her, even sometimes now for the kids, yes, the children are not supposed, they are young, they're below 18 years, but remember they have guardians, and guardian thinks for them. The case will not go to high court. Even if it's in high court, they'll end up not coming. And it will be dismissed for want of prosecution. You understand? Yeah.
I was in northern Uganda. You speak of very important first that raised what I found in northern Uganda. When I spoke to a cultural leader, and they spoke of culture and the cleansing culture, and what hit me the most was removing the child from wherever they got hurt from. The reasoning for this culture was, in one way or another, for them, they're protecting the victim by not making them stay with where all the atrocities that happened to them to begin with. But then I had a challenge with the fact that after you remove this child from this place, very well and good, why does it feel like abandonment? Because you're sending this child to go to her maternal side of her family and live there. But because the culture, everybody already knows what happened to this said child, you are hearing statements like prostitute, or you wanted to break down the family. In one of the stories that we had, this child kept on throwing herself to her father's side, not to the side of the family where she grew up from. She was only but a child, only to realize that she was actually a product. It's actually while fighting, when the mother and the auntie were fighting, that the secret was hit down on the floor of, you're a prostitute. That is why you have a bastard child. You understand? And in understanding the bastard child, they find out that, the bastard child actually they're speaking of is a product of incest. This woman was young. The power play was on the uncle's side, a husband to an auntie actually. And unfortunately, now this child has to grow up in this kind of environment. She finding that now the best you could do was you wonder ways. These people had done their cleansing rituals. Everybody, they did the whole reconciliation, but then now the factor in of a product, and now that brings me, when culture and law fail to meet, and they are more than just one victim, an innocent child that comes into play, and where the laws in Uganda do not protect them to have ancestry, to have identity, and to have a place where they belong, because they neither belong to their mother's side or their father's side. Though culture dictates that now they belong to the mother's side, but the mother's side will be like, I'm only doing you a favor because your mother opened her leg. There's another story where a mother claimed that her daughter had seduced the husband, and hence why there was a child in play. Where because the culture in Uganda, we used to get married, our parents used to get married as teenagers, they believe that it is still the same, that now a 14-year-old can actually seduce a 50-year-old. Where now does the law protect the product of that union? I'll start with the police.
Of course, law is law, and law is superior to culture. Where there is a standing law, we are going to protect this child by all means, doesn't matter. So we cannot frontline culture where there is child rights has been violated. We cannot put culture first. We have to first look at the child and ensure that they attain justice, they are put in a safe place. And like I said before, each case is unique. And the uniqueness of the case gives us what to do. We are victim-centered. And we have stories, success stories. Yeah, it's not all that all the time that cases are withdrawn. We have some success stories, many of them actually.
That's amazing. Through the law, the people that bring justice through the court, when there's a product, there's a pregnancy, there's a child involved, their identity is in question, who protects this byproduct of this? I would dare say double taboo.
The law. And any culture that is in contravention with the law is null and void by the Constitution. When you talk of a child, I'm reminded about the Children's Act and the welfare principle that governs the upbringing of a child and the rights of a child. That's, I think, Section 3 and 4 of the Children's Act. Really the law. So whatever happened between you adults happened, but now we have a product of whatever happened. Can you both try to see a way to raise this child and maybe not traumatize them? Of course, sometimes you see the men not wanting to provide because of various reasons. This is an outcast and stuff like that. But the law supersedes. So they are protected under the law.
And then what happens if this is their identity? The identity says you don't belong to your father's side of the family because you are a product of aggravated defilement, which they will not call that. They will call it a union, because to them, even a 14-year-old can consent. And then this child on their maternal side also, they are holding the secret to make sure this child does not get to know. But however, the child has questions. Identity, in whether legally, by the name they hold, are we protected by NIRA, let's say, those children, so that NIRA is not asking me, who is your father? Where do you belong to? What is your clan? What is your tribe? This is me. I'm a product of rape. I'm a product of incest. And I don't even know who did this to my mother. My own mother is not willing to relieve that pain. That is if she's unwilling to look at me because I am a product of one of the worst days of her life. Where in identification, in identity crisis, because we have seen that a lot in northern Uganda, where we are having a lot of stateless children. And these stateless children are often as a result of sexual violence. How does now the state come in and say, this is how you're protected legally. This is what the law says about your identity. What do we do?
Wow, that's an interesting one. But for NERA, I know NERA is an institution, government institution that has been given the mandate to register all its nationals. Okay. Now, when I hear you speak, it makes me rather think of how culture is still taking its shape. See, we are still finding its roots. It still penetrates through the law. We are trying, because if I'm a NERA official, if I give you the identity of my dad and the identity of my mom, and I prefer to belong to my mom's clan,
Why would you question me?
why are you questioning me? I mean, just register me, give me the national ID, and let me be recognized as a Ugandan, be able to access all the services. Why are you so interested
Digging deep.
in who my father is, in where he comes from?
And
Why?
to add on, like I said, every case is unique. When we conference about a certain child, remember I talked about a holistic helping, holistic approach. You find those unique cases where children are given out to foster parents and who later on even adopt them. So they could opt for that.
I hear you when you say that, and that is what the cultural leader also urged and said that for them, they're literally saying, go to your maternal side of the family and let it adopt you. But culturally, even if they have adopted me on my maternal side of the family, I have no inheritance. I have no belonging. As a matter of fact, if I were to die that day, or my bride, when I grow up, get married as a man, let's say I'm a product, I'm a boy, yes, I would love to know, where do they bury me, which is my inheritance, and where do I belong? And that is one of the challenges we found, for example, in northern Uganda, where the kids are saying, I do not have land. My mother was just given a small house, and they said, stay there. And if she does not get remarried out of the trauma, then I do not have an identity as a man. Because for women, it is easily hidden because I get remarried and probably decide to stick to my... But then for the culture, the African culture, the Ugandan culture that puts heritage on the head of a boy, and now this boy is a product of rape, a product of incest, and they do not have where they belong.
That takes me back to we still have a lot of work to do. We still have to educate each and every one of us, because if this victim is in your hands, you also need help as the caregiver. You need to be talked to, because this is a child who needs a unique kind of upbringing. They've gone through a lot. They have a lot of trauma. They need a lot of help, and that is where you're going to come in. And as they grow up, find a way of telling them. It could be traumatizing. I don't know. It could be traumatizing, but because questions are going to come in from them. Who am I? They're looking for their identity. And remember, in the Children's Act, every child has a right to identity. Now, it is upon you, the caregiver, to explain. I don't know how you're going to package it, but you'll need to guide this child through, just to ensure that they are not re-traumatized, and as they grow up, they know how to handle themselves. Because I'm thinking, if they got to know the truth, why would they be like, they'll know how to handle themselves. Well, I think when it comes to registration, it's the kind of people I handle. When most of them are refugees, when they bear a child after this whole incident, if it's out of incest and the registration is done by the OPM. It's always the attestation, we call them attestation cards, where they're registered. We put that child on the mother's attestation. That's how we identify them. Because by the time we have this thing, by the time this uncle defiled this child, his niece, meaning she's not secure at all, meaning the family, and 99%, the family will always be on the uncle's side. You understand? So we're like, okay, meaning the child's going to be insecure, the mother and the child. So now we put them on the attestation of the mother. That's their identity. And then, of course, with time, because you're written there, after 18 years, you have a right to leave that station. With time, we always do that MHPSS. We counsel these people and tell them you're a product of this when they have really grown. And then you have no identity. However, if you want to know your identity, this is where you come from. You understand? We don't leave them to be there like without anywhere they belong. Because if they have where they belong, then at least they will feel into the community. But also when it comes also to NERA, I feel like it's not about even the trainings or educating or informing or them being learned. It's sometimes about the person handling you. I've seen them handle people and they'll be like, someone says, I don't have a father. And the NERA person will just chill, will not even ask details. We go to the next thing. And then you find another person who will actually even chase you away. You understand? As much as we want to educate them, let them, because being learned and being informed are totally different things. You may know what to do, but you're not informed. You understand? So I feel like also NERA needs some little training, because even if we ignore all these things, they're happening. People are chased out of the line, even for birth certificates, because they ask you for the father's name number, and then sometimes these people don't have them. And they end up not getting the birth certificates. So I think that's why you say whether we like it or not, culture, a lot. It hands a lot in life. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been a very lovely conversation. As we make our conclusions, I would call for us to give some way forwards. We've had quite a lot of challenges, quite a lot of breakthroughs, but there have been quite a number of gaps here and there, both civil society, the law, and enforcement. I'll start with civil society. What are some of the way forwards that you think should be put in place to ensure that victims are protected, perpetrators receive their due punishment regardless of what culture says, and of course your takeaways for people to really consider out there in the community?
Again, thank you. First of all, let's more focus on implementation. The laws are there, but implementing them in the societies, implementing for them to really have the strength of them. And the other thing is that the GBV cases will always be there. They're not going to end today, they're not going to end tomorrow, but they can reduce. Yeah. We can reduce on them. It's as we are all there fighting and everything, let the government and with also the community look at safe places. Let's be each person's safe place, because our child is defiled not because she's attracting this man, not because she called this man to come, but even that defilement can stop once a child makes an alarm and calling for help, or someone at night is calling for help, but you find people will not be there. People will end up just locking their doors the more. So yes, you end up seeing people, when a child is being defiled, the judgment that comes from people is a lot. And as long as we are being there like that, being selfish, we have there's a famous Twitter quote that people keep on saying, we all have to have a central nervous system that feels each other's pain. Let's stop being selfish. We need implementation of the laws. We need to build safe shelters for these people, because they really, really need them. They need to get where to go. And also put a lot of livelihood. Poverty really does a big thing. But if people are there, they are busy skilling them and everything. Skilling, not just teaching them what to do, but after what happens, you have taught them what to do. Please equip them with something small so that they get busy. But you find when they're also poor, when people come back home, they're angry, they have nothing to eat, they're angry, they're hungry, so they end up fighting. You get the GBV cases will always be there. So I feel that's what, that's a take home. And then for everyone out there, no one ever wishes to be a survivor. No one. And, there is this thing I like telling people. Everyone is wiser until it's their story to tell. Sure. You understand? So you might be there judging a survivor. You might be saying, oh my God, why did she wear like that? Da. Please, be kind. Be kind. Be kind to everyone. You never know what perfect thing. And GBV is something that we need all of us to hold. It's not a one-man thing. all of us need to come together and fight against it. That's why I say, where I see like the organization where I work, like they're really putting a lot of policy, they're really fighting so hard. Organizations are coming out so hard like to fight this thing. And that is all that we need, people to come out and fight.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Wilkins. To the law and the courts, the justice upholders, what are your conclusions in terms of policies, implementation, and where the law we have understood that somehow the culture, whether we like it or not, invades us where we are, even when we are trying to uphold the law. So in what way do we either work with culture or go above it so that we ensure that there is protection for each and everyone among those that come to us to seek for help?
Interesting when you talk of culture and the law. I'm so passionate about that. I think we could have a whole conversation, but anyway. For the law, I think my request would only be to the legislators. Can we have some of these laws in place? I know we're a country rich with laws, but let's not get tired of making the laws. The witness protection laws, the sexual offences bill, can it pass into law? You know, we are really protecting the accused person. What about this survivor? At the end of the day, we don't get tired of making these laws, because these laws at the end of the day will protect one or two people. When it comes to implementation, again, just like the law doesn't work in a vacuum, we as stakeholders can't work in a vacuum. Can we collaborate? Because if the police has this and then I feed into it and then she's feeding into it and then you're feeding into their work, like she says, it is a holistic approach. Okay, so can we collaborate? Can we strengthen those ties? Can we have someone within government try to push for government-funded shelters? Because without these shelters, we are just encouraging the entire cycle of sexual violence, okay, and GBV at large. So can we have these shelters where psychosocial support is given, but also such that we can have the survivor taken away from this particular place and, given comfort and security till at least the time prosecution is done. Yeah, so those would be my key takeaways. Then for culture, how can we work with culture? Can we, I don't know, sensitize them? I don't know, we would talk about sensitization because I now got to realize that cultural leaders are being recognized at national level. Can we work with these cultural institutions, the heads of these cultural institutions, to codify some of these agreements that we come up with, okay? Because it does not make sense for us to go and say, stop child marriage, stop wife beating, if we do not have something codified for the people that these cultural leaders lead to have reference to. So can we work with the cultural institutions, because they play a big role, a big role. Yes.
Thank you. To Miss Sarah Nanyunja, we have, from the conversation, we have realized that in Kampala, well, we are still badly off. There's progress. But the conversation has highlighted on how communities, rural communities, are still behind on accessing, feeling like, oh, I can report this to police and not see it as a monetary way. If in your conclusions, how can the police really bridge that gap between rural communities who believe in their own way of dealing with issues, they have their own police, and also some of the key takeaways you could have to say police should be able to have going forward in the next years or implement to ensure that there is victim protection or witness protection, and also avoiding re-traumatizing victims, especially in cases where they have zero alternatives on where to go, and yet the suspect was only held for 48 hours.
Like it's portrayed that cases are many in town compared to rural areas. Mainly, I think it's because people in cities educated enough. There is a lot of awareness going on in the cities, social media, technology, but which is not the case with rural areas. But it doesn't mean that these cases are not there. Actually, if those people have this knowledge, you'll be shocked to see their numbers increasing. So I think we are supposed to create a lot of awareness. As much as we think people have this knowledge, they don't have. I've witnessed land women who come to office and their rights are being violated. A woman you look at and you think they are learned, they're educated, but they don't know what to do. And she'll tell you, Afande, tell me, what do I do? You know? Yet you think she has, things of her. She knows the steps to take once her rights are violated. Or she doesn't even know her rights as a woman. So let's not think that people have this knowledge. There's still a knowledge gap that needs to be bridged by us who know these things. We need to go out in the communities and sensitize. We should not be tired. And again, sensitization of our children. Let's teach them as young as you think they are. Let's talk about these issues from a very tender age. We need to tell them that these things are happening around us, and this is what you're supposed to do in case you find this kind of trouble. Otherwise, let's not think they are children, mere children. What can happen to an adult can happen to this child. So they also need this knowledge. So we need to wake up and make a lot of noise on issues of sexual violence and gender-based violence at large. Thank you.
Thank you. You've had it right here on the law, the culture, and surviving sexual violence in Uganda. The conversation after. I've been your host, and then come here.